Hi, I'm Nancy Flinchbaugh with SpiritualSeedlings.com, and today I want to welcome you to the MAMs Book Club video series. In my novels, I feature the magnificent and marvelous book club, the MAMs. They read books which take them on various adventures, and they have a lot of fun. When I wrote my first book, one of my friends said, "Nancy, I want to be in a group like the MAMs." And so I created a real-life MAM Books Club that meets once a month in my house. And every time we read a book, I create a study guide. And on the study guides, I put first some questions that might be helpful to use in your discussion of the book. And then I comment on each book along with each of my MAMs. The beginning of the study guide will give you just basic information about the publisher, when it was published, and how you can contact the author. For example, I have a Facebook page, Nancy Flinchbaugh Author. I have 2 websites where you can find information about me at SpiritualSeedlings.com and NancyFlinchbaugh.com. So today we are reviewing Revelation in the Roots, a 2022 book by All Things That Matter Press. And what you'll find on the book cover about the book, it says, "The magnificent and marvelous book club, the MAMs, return in this adventure to explore their Irish roots. The ancient spirits of the leprechaun, St. Bridget, and an African-American matriarch conspire to awaken the travelers to possibilities. Grieving, reluctant Abigail considers opening her heart. Black ex-convict Welby and Reagan, a white nurse in recovery, find attraction, yet they come from opposite ends of the political divide. The group explores the Emerald Isle, pauses for listening circles, retreats at the Well of St. Bridget, and gathers at the Peace Center in Northern Ireland, and ultimately they find new hope for their lives and for all of us." Some of the questions that I think this book raises are, first of all, of course, just what were your general impressions of the book? And the book begins with a discussion between a leprechaun, St. Bridget, and Grandmama, all fictitious, obviously spirits, or ghosts, if you will. And I just wondered what you think about those characters and the conversation they have. And then I ask, have you ever had a visit from someone who has passed on? And explain that. Tell your friends about that. My fourth question is, are there ancestors or other great people who inspire you in your life? Then, of course, talk about which of the characters you enjoyed. One of the things that they do in this group, in this book, is they stop and pause for listening circles. So I just wanted you to reflect a little bit about that. How does that impact their travels? And are you involved in any listening circles, and what are they like for you? The group home characters are in recovery from drug and alcohol problems, and the MAMs took them to Ireland hoping it might help them in their recovery. So as you read the book, do you think it helped? Is this a good strategy to help people that are in recovery? Why or no, why not? And then we look a little bit, we have a lot of issues within our criminal justice system, and one is that African Americans are just much more likely to go to jail, and they get stiffer sentences. Like in this book, Reagan stole drugs from the hospital. She was a nurse. She went to rehab, whereas Welby, who had some drugs in his glove compartment, went to prison for 5 years. So I just wondered, I want you to talk a little bit about that, justice of that, our system, and what you want to do about it. Also, I'm really trying in this book to deal with our political differences. The MAMs have some differences among their political beliefs, as do the group home people that went on the trip. So I just want to know what you think about the retreat they had towards the end of the book. Did that make a difference? And what can we do about our political differences here in our country? Then I encourage you to read over what the MAMs have to say, and I'm going to read their comments in a few minutes. And I ask, who do you agree with, and why. Then you could talk a little bit about a silent retreat. Have you ever been on a silent retreat? It's really a wonderful experience. I go on one at least once a year. And then I wonder what you think the message of the book is, and does the book motivate you to work to build bridges across race and culture? So now let's hear what I had to say about the book and what the MAMs had. This book developed from my spiritual practice over 5 years. I wanted to engage the magnificent and marvelous book club, the MAMs, in a trip to Ireland after visiting the Isle with my husband for our 30th wedding anniversary. But I also wanted to continue their group home efforts, which they began in the last book, Revelation at the Labyrinth, while addressing racial and political divisions. I took a second trip to Ireland to a peace center, which helped me finish the story. I hope you'll enjoy the adventure and that it will inspire you to build bridges across racial and political divides. Catherine, our fictitious man, who's a religion professor, said, "Thank you, Nancy, for taking us on another adventure. I enjoyed going back to Ireland and exploring the religious sites we visited at the monasteries, St. Bridget's Well, the Holy Well Retreat Center, and the Shalem Center for Peace. I'll remember this trip for a long time and listening to each other also." Jane, who's an entrepreneur, says, "Well, I just want to commend Ireland on their work to make the country a great tourist destination. For such a small island, there's so much to see, and I enjoyed it all. From the beauty of the coast at the Cliffs of Moher, the Dingle Peninsula, Cork Harbor, the Wicklow Mountains, and the Giant's Causeway to the Blarney Castle, the Clonmacnoise and Glendalough Monasteries, and the Leprechaun Museum. We can learn a lot from the Irish on how to treat visitors to a good time." Abigail, who is a widow, had a pretty good time in this book, so this is what she has to say. "What a trip, ladies. I'm so glad we wrote that grant to take some of our group home members to Ireland. I thought I was crazy when the leprechaun started talking to me, but I'm glad he helped me decide to have listening circles. That brought us together. But of course, Seamus was my favorite part, so much more than I could ever have imagined." Molly says, "Who'd have thought that Ireland could be all this? Just after I learned I've got Irish DNA mixed up with my African blood, I get to explore the land of my green ancestors. A lot of fun, yes. And I'm so glad we took Welby along to explore his Irish roots. I think he learned a lot and has a new appreciation not only for the Irish, but for himself as an Irish African American. Way to go, MAMs." I loved Ireland. All the quaint little colorful houses, the many shades of green along the roadways, and the tourist attractions make it such a wonderful place to visit. I was especially surprised by what happened on the silent retreat. I think that Reagan and Welby were really touched by God there. I've never done a silent retreat before, but I'd like to do that again. So much fun exploring with the MAMs. Sally, the retired kindergarten teacher in the MAMs, said, "I loved the Leprechaun Museum. Getting to hear the history of the leprechauns, walk into the land of make-believe and hear all those folk tales, a lot of fun for children and adults. And I especially loved the retreat at the Shalem Center for Peace in Northern Ireland. I hope we can have more peacemaking retreats like that here in the United States." You can find a PDF version of the study guide on my website at spiritualseedlings.com. Just look on the left side of the page and scroll down to the MAMs Book Club, and then on that page you'll find this as number 98. This is the 98th book that the MAMs Book Club Springfield has read. This is Nancy Flinchbaugh with spiritualseedlings.com. Thank you for visiting with me today, and you can find more study guides on my website at spiritualseedlings.com.